Wes Moss, welcome to Money Matters, Happy Retiree Special, where we interview the very best people in Atlanta and around the country on our favorite topics about early retirement, money, adventure, social, and health. All the four cornerstones you need to be a happy retiree. Today with me, Kevin Rathbun, who, if you're in the Southeast, you know him as the premier restaurateur chef in all of Atlanta, the Southeast, and probably for a lot of the country. Would you say most of the country?
Well, I'd like to say most of the country for sure. Somebody knows me somewhere. I don't know. They saw me on Iron Chef or Chopped or something like that. I think I had some customers from Russia that were super excited to know that I beat Bobby Flay on Iron Chef. So,
I want to talk about Iron Chef a little bit. So really the introduction for me is that Kevin Rathbun is the very best chef in all of Atlanta. Period.
I love you.
My wife said, "Are you going to see my boyfriend today?" Kevin Rathbun. So Lynn, my wife's a big fan.
Thank you, Lynn.
So you know him from his flagship, Kevin Rathbun, really Rathbun's, and then Kevin Rathbun Steak, KR Steak Bar, which I always call KRSB. That's the three top restaurants in the entire city for me are those three. So that's it. Like I don't need any other chef, any other place. Just those three Kevin Rathbun restaurants is all I need, and I know he has even more than that. He was the head chef at Buckhead Life, and he has these just accolades galore, like every magazine you've ever heard of, Details and Best Steakhouse in America. He was in Playboy, Best Steakhouse in Atlanta, Rachel Ray. He was the winner of Iron Chef. Today, though, I really want to get the business story, Kevin.
Sure. About
you going from corporate to your own restaurants, which is awesome. And I also want to talk about the concept. You've made it in arguably the hardest industry to make it in. There's this appeal like, oh, restaurants would be so great. It's easy and it's fun and it's so glamorous and it seems like fun, but
careful what you wish for.
Exactly. And that's what I want to dig into. I want to talk about the restaurant business and then how you got started as an entrepreneur. So really, let's start there. Money, a lot of times how we make a living is really somewhat of an adventure. So the adventure, your money adventure to some extent is what we're going to, I think, capture today here on the show on Money Matters. Why don't we start out with, what you did if we take you back as a kid,
right?
A, were you entrepreneurial as a kid, and B, were you already in the kitchen as a kid?
So it's a long story. It's actually a 43-year story. So I've actually been cooking since I was 14 years old. But I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri. My mother was a maitre d' in restaurants all over Kansas City. She was 6'2", wore a size 11 shoe, wore a bow tie and a tuxedo at night, and did tableside anything. Steak Diane's, Cherry's Jubilee, Caesar salad, all of that stuff.
This is just for the family.
This is she was in restaurants, right?
Oh, she was in restaurants. Okay.
So I learned from an early age that eating good food, dining out in nice restaurants was something that I was probably going to be doing the rest of my life. So when I was 14, my father got ill. I needed to make some money for myself. So we didn't have a lot, didn't come from a lot. And went to work at a place called Sambo's, which they closed because of the name, of course. Sambo's had 800 stores at the time, and they're just like a Denny's. They were a 24-hour restaurant. So if you picture Denny's, but, Sambo's, so I worked there as a dishwasher. That was my first job.
Wait, what happened with Sambo's? What happened to the story there?
Because of the name, it was a nursery rhyme. About the little black Sambo and the Indian kid and the lion, and so they ended up getting a big discrimination suit against them. So they had to close all these stores.
All right, so you're out of a job as a teenager.
They didn't do that while I was there, so they did that years later. But that's kind of where I got my start, and because my mother was in the business when I was 16, I got a car and ended up working in a restaurant she was working in called Le Bon Auberge, which was a French restaurant, and did that for a little while, washed dishes and pots, and the chef was like, maybe we can get you into prepping or whatever, and I couldn't wait. So I started cooking at some other restaurants and just fell in love with it. And where I got a really good start about this business, I was 17 years old. I was working at the Kansas City Club, which was a private men's club. I got a call from this guy from the American Restaurant, which is owned by Hallmark Cards.
The American Restaurant.
The American Restaurant. It's been around. It was around for about 45 years.
And this is in Kansas City.
In Kansas City, and it's owned by Don Hall of Hallmark Cards, and it was his signature toy, and it was built by a guy by the name of Joe Baum, who was a big restaurateur out of New York City, and what a beautiful place it was. So I get a call from the chef one day. He says, "Hey, I hear that you're a cook, and I'm looking for cooks." I'm like, "Well, how'd you hear my name?" Well, that's another story, but I ended up going over there. I got a job within 6 months. He said, "When do you get out of high school?" And I said, "Well, I'm taking a distributive education class now, so I can leave at 12 and I could be to work by 1.
Oh, cool.
And he said, "That'd be fantastic. We want to make you the next sous chef." So,
well, explain then what a sous chef does to our listeners who don't necessarily even know the terminology. So what is it?
So a sous chef is like second in command to the chef.
It is,
so,
all right.
Now I'm going to be running a kitchen at 17 years old with people that are probably 3, 4, 5, 10 years my age that I got to, I'm going to have to manage, right? But the beauty of it was...
Now, was that because you were good at the business side of it, or also a really good cook, or how do you get such a...
that was all about cooking. And
it really
attitude.
was. So you were you're a good cook
cooking,
out of the
attitude,
gate.
And I'd seen it from young. My mother and father had parties all growing up, so I knew how to cook really well. I knew how to treat people really well. I knew what restaurant and hospitality was all about. So that came super easy. So this guy recognized that in me and said, "You're going to do it." So in 1979, he offered me like $25,000 a year to be the sous chef, and I was still in high school.
Wow. Okay.
So I thought that maybe I got something here. So, and it was a beautiful restaurant. First time I ever saw white truffles, and first time I ever saw like just beautiful caviar and fish and all this stuff coming in from all over the world. It was just fantastic. So I fell in love with it, and I've been doing it ever since.
So you knew at an early age, and then you got some real momentum still in your in teen years.
Yeah.
And then how long did that last? And then I know that if I reading your bio, you spent some time in Spain. And when did you end up in Atlanta, and how did that journey start?
So the progression goes. Hallmark Cards paid for me to go to school. So actually, I went to community college, Johnson County Community College. Did a 2-year program. They fast-tracked me through it because I worked at the American Restaurant, and so I got that associate's degree in hospitality management. The day after, I got offered to go.
By the way, did you learn anything there? How much did you learn that, or did you just want to get a degree and get through school?
I think it was more of a degree than anything. I learned some stuff, menu writing, and some things about business on that side of it. But not a lot. It was, I was all about the cooking and focused on, just being a chef. So I ended up I got an offer to go to Houston, Texas, to work for the Brennan family. So I moved out of Kansas City when I was 20, moved to Houston, Texas, worked for the Brennans, was a sous chef there.
Tell me about that restaurant group.
So the Brennans they're pretty famous. You've probably seen that commercial back in the day, Brennan's Coffee of New Orleans. So that's the family from New Orleans. They actually had a Brennan's here where 103 West is. Yeah. It used to be a Brennan's back in the day. They had quite a few restaurants, and they still have a huge empire today. Ella Brennan is like the matriarch. She passed a couple years ago, and she's just super famous, and worked for that group in Houston.
As a sous chef or
as a sous chef? As a sous chef for a couple years. And then they fired the chef, and I said, "Well, what are you going to do with me? Fire me too?" And they were like, "Well, we're not really going to fire you, but we might give you an opportunity." So Emeril Lagasse was the corporate chef of the company.
Is this before he got super, super famous?
Yeah, way before he got super famous.
And what was he like as a chef? Was he talented?
He was great. He was great. I worked for Emeril I didn't really get to spend a lot of time with him because what happened was he said, "Listen, we want you to come to New Orleans." So that's how I was able to get to New Orleans. I spent about 10 months in New Orleans and worked at Commander's Palace. I was his sous chef at Commander's Palace, and he was a great guy. I learned a lot from him, but the place was just enormous. It was just like this tourist, place. And I wanted to do a little bit more finesse food and touch food a little bit more.
When you have hundreds of people coming every single day, it's hard to do that then?
Yeah, it's a little bit more... I hate to say factory because it's a wonderful restaurant. Commander's Palace is on the map as being one of the greatest restaurants in America today, and it has been for many years.
Commander's Palace in New Orleans.
Commander's Palace in New Orleans, yeah. So, but I wanted as a young guy to, be more creative, touch the food a little bit more, get into, some new cuisines. So I then got an offer to go to Dallas, Texas, a place called Baby Ruth in Dallas, which was a sister restaurant to Roost Street Cafe. And that restaurant was a Southwestern restaurant. And Southwestern at that time was like the biggest thing ever. Everybody was talking about it.
What year are we talking?
That was about 86.
Mid-'80s.
Yeah, mid-'80s.
So Southwestern was really just...
Southwestern was...
really peaking.
Yeah, really peaking at the time. People were loving it. So then I got a call. I was there for about 7 years.
As the head chef?
No, I went there as a sous chef. And then within 6 months, that chef left and...
became head.
I actually kind of fought the battle. There was another sous chef that had been there prior to me for a couple of years. And they interviewed a bunch of people to be the chef, and they talked to greats, some of the celebrity greats out there that are chefs. And they finally said after about 3 months, the food cost was good. People were talking great about the food. They said, Kevin, we want you to be the guy. So that was when I was 23.
Oh, you were still only 23?
Still only 23.
At the time.
And they gave me $50,000 a year then. So I was like, that's a pretty good number.
Yeah, it is.
So, I knew I had something. And so I became the chef there, and I was the chef there for another 6.5 years. And then I got the call from the Buckhead Life Restaurant Group, and they wanted to do a Southwestern concept. So
and that was Nava.
That was Nava. So Pano came to Dallas with his son. They ate my food twice, and he said, you need to work for me, and this is the guy. So that's how I got to Atlanta.
I've always wondered how much in let's just stay with one restaurant for now, because at some point we're going to talk about multiple restaurants. And I know that you ran, so you came and you started you were the head of Nava, head chef.
Yes.
And eventually you became the corporate chef for all of the Buckhead Life. But let's stick with one restaurant just for a second. How much is the head chef, how much are you involved with every single plate, every single meal? And what happens when you take off a week or two? How does the food quality stay? And is it about being an amazing chef and also an amazing manager? Or are you also a business person at that point? How do you take what you know and your talent? Because I always think of chef as like you're being an artist. It'd be really hard for an artist to have 10 artists and say, hey, I want everybody to paint just like me. Like, that's impossible. But as a chef, you kind of have to do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the artistry is the really fun part, right? The number piece is the piece that, I didn't really know until I worked for the people in Dallas. I said, listen, I can do the food, but you guys will have to teach me the numbers. So they taught me numbers. They taught me food costs. They taught me how to, make all of this work. They taught me about labor costs and how to figure all of that. So, and then when I came here, Pano's group is a good group. He's very food focused, but he's very business focused. So, the Buckhead Life Group knows how to run a business. And, that's the one thing that I hadn't really seen up until, I was at Baby Ruth, and it was owned by a billionaire. So if he broke even, he was a happy clam.
It was really not to make a profit.
No. I had all the prep cooks. I had everything I needed. I was able to, finesse, everything diced this small. If it wasn't right, throw it out. So I had that opportunity as a young guy, but I didn't really, it wasn't making money.
And you knew at the time, or looking maybe once you got educated in Houston, you look back and say, that place really wasn't making any money. That's not how to make a living.
No, that's not how to make a living. Yeah, that's not how to make a living. And that's a play toy for a billionaire, right? So, if you're that guy, you got great restaurants, and you're supporting 50 employees, and you're helping out the community, and the philanthropy that he taught me how to do and give back was like second to none, this guy.
And that's where, and we're going to get to your philanthropic side. That's part of where you get that? Because you support so many charities in the Atlanta area.
Well,
where did you get all that from?
My parents were big givers, number one. So, that was probably the biggest part. But when I worked for this guy in Dallas, Texas, he was just like, I would always go to him and say, hey, these guys want to do this event, that event. Can we give gift certificates here or there? And he said, Kevin, quit asking me. Just give it away. Just if you feel comfortable about it and you think it's the right thing to do, you do it. So, just laying it in my hands. And I'm like 23, 25, 27 years old. I'm like, all right, here we go.
Well, you just got
never
used
had a problem with them. Yeah.
And as we're talking about this, what starts to pop into my head is that you think about WSB Radio, it's kind of we're part of the community. So when people think about, hey, we need help with something, you go to your local media. But it's also somewhat like that when it comes to a restaurant. You're so public. And when you're so public, and when you get to have a name like the Buckhead Life Group, or now your restaurant group, the Rathbun group of restaurants, it becomes like part of the community, and people think of you as top of mind. It's like, oh, well, we need restaurants to participate in this school auction. Well, let's go to Rathbun's. Let's go. So you probably get hit up for stuff all the time.
Every day, all day.
Every day, all day.
But you can't do it all, right? I mean, you want to get back to what you're. I've always had the problem of not being able to say no. That's who I am. That's where I come from. I married a New Orleans girl. We've been married. We're celebrating our 29th anniversary coming up next month, and she could say no, and she's always like, "Honey, I think you need to say no every now and then." So
it's the perfect yang.
Yeah, it is. Yang. It's the perfect yin and yang. I mean, you have to have that, that balance. Otherwise, I'd give away the house. I mean, that's kind of who I am, and I've always been that way. But she keeps me on track. But there's a lot of things. She's very cognizant of, children, cancer, things that have happened to us that
impacted the family
that really should be the focus. That way you can just kind of you don't have the muddy waters, and you can kind of slow down on some of those other things.
If you're just tuning in, we're with Kevin Rathbun, the famous restaurateur that beat Bobby Flay on the Iron Chef, and now has a whole group of restaurants in Atlanta that are all of them are in my top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Kevin, just give us a list of all the Atlanta properties you have.
So the original one I started, which we'll celebrate in its 15th year, was next month, is Rathbun's. That's the first one, all on Krog Street. That one's on Krog Street. About 6 months after that, I had an opportunity to.
And for those listening outside the perimeter, Krog Street is in Inman Park,
yes,
which is about a mile or two from downtown Atlanta.
Yeah.
Got it.
About a mile and a half or so, yeah.
So
it's on the east side.
So Rathbun's first.
So Rathbun's, and I opened Krog Bar about 6 months to 8 months later. We took off. The place was doing great, so I had the opportunity there was a building out there. It was only 750 square feet, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do in that? And I had been to Spain, and I'd seen these tapas bars and these ham bars, and I'm like, that's what I'm going to do. So 14 years ago, we did a tapas bar.
And he's saying tapas is in the food, not topless.
Yeah, not topless.
It's a tapas bar, okay.
We tried that, but it didn't work. I don't look very good topless.
It's in Inman Park. And then after Krog, and
then what happened was, and I didn't even know really what the Beltline was, Wes, when I rented that property. When I leased that property, I just felt good about the area. It kind of reminded me of New Orleans. It was like this, kind of nice house over here and project over here kind of place. And, I just felt good. It felt crunchy. It felt like me, So I kept on, driving around for 4 or 5 years. I realized that this is kind of where it was. And I found this empty spot, or this restaurant, tried to buy it from them. They wanted.
Was there a restaurant?
There was a restaurant called Virginia's.
Huh.
And they wanted kind of an enormous sum. And I'm like, that's not really what I need. I need to do this grassroots, right? I got to figure out what it was. So I had met the.
Oh yeah, so let's do this. So let me do this. We're going into the entrepreneurial story here. Yeah. You are at Buckhead Life. You ran Nava,
right?
Then they gave you control over multiple restaurants.
Started Kima. Did R&D for.
But still, did you have ownership in those, or were you're working for this company? And did you say, hey, I want to have my own restaurant? So they said, sure, Kevin, we'll keep you. And how did you get from there to there?
I mean, I've always, the next step was, I am 38, 39 years old, and I want to do this on my own somehow, some way. I don't want to be 50 regretting the fact that I'm working for somebody else. I did that for 28 years of my life, and it was just time. It was time for me to at least take that step and see if I could do it. So, kind of pushed myself out of the nest. One day, specifically, Pano said to me, "What do you want to do next? What are we going to do next?" And I'm like, "Well, I said, let's open a restaurant together. And, I kind of threw a couple of percentages out there, 50-50, and he wasn't having it. So, he's a family-run business. That's what he wanted to run his own business and do his own deal. And you got to admire that, right? So he's been doing it a long time. So that day I said, all right, here's the deal. In 365 days, fire me if I'm still here.
If I'm still here.
If I'm still here. So I gave, Did
you last 365?
I gave a 365-day notice. 4 months later, he was, he didn't talk to me. So, but, that's understandable. It's, he moved on to the next chef and who was going to run his operation.
Knowing that you were out the door.
Knowing that I was out the door, and people were talking about it because I had never really said anything to anybody. And then I'm learning about how to lease a space,
People, so
I'm
he
learning
knows
about
you're
architecture.
you're
I'm learning
moving.
about restaurant design, kitchen stuff, and everybody everybody knows Pano, right? So I knew it was going to come back.
Rathbun, he's going out on his own. Okay,
Yeah.
so he probably was like, all right, I'm moving on.
Yeah, I'm moving on. So you got to respect that. And, he kind of held to some of his, he gave me about 6 weeks. And we just kind of held out, and I gave him a date that I could leave, and I left and kind of did some.
Well, then when did you have then, how long did it take to get Rathbun's going, and how did you get it started?
So it was about, that was like the end of 2002, and we opened Rathbun's in 2004.
What'd you do for 2 years?
So for about a year and a half, I had, customers I've known through his group would, I'd do dinners at their house. I went up to Chicago and I opened up a restaurant for somebody up there for 3 months. Just consulting and that kind of thing. And
so you're able to still make a living doing this?
Still going to make a living.
And where was Iron Chef in all this? What year was that?
That came about 3 years after we opened Rathbun. So that was more like 2007 or so.
So we're going back to 2004.
Yeah.
So you have a couple years here where you're trying. What are you doing in that 2 years beyond the consulting? How much time and then the money side of it? How do you get the money side of it going?
So I basically wrote a business proposal, and I had found the space that I thought. Let me get back to the story how I found the space. So the landlord I met at the Ritz-Carlton. I never go to the Ritz-Carlton, so I'm having drinks with a guy who sells office space, right? So he introduces me to this guy. I said, the name sounds familiar. He said, yeah, I own the Stoveworks. I said, yeah, that's a great place. I said, here's my card. If anything ever comes around or happens to that space, call me. So he called me about 6 months later, and he said, I got a deal for you. And I said, fantastic. What is the deal? And he said, bring these guys a $20,000 check and you get the space.
Down payment.
No, just for them to get out. They wanted $250,000. I had asked 6 months prior. So, and then I would have had to redesign and do all that. That was just not in my. I couldn't take that big of a second mortgage on my house.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm coming. So I came down there, gave these guys a $20,000 check. Called my wife. I said, honey, we got a restaurant. Where? I said it's in Inman Park by the Martin Luther King Center. And she goes, why would you go down there when you could be in Buckhead? Everybody knows you're in Buckhead.
Yeah.
It's a new spot. I don't know. It just feels good. So she came in and
feels good.
Yeah,
Gut index.
Just came.
Feels good.
Just came. She came down that day and she looked at it, and it was in the middle of December and the place was cold and damp, and she was like, go get our money back right now. And I said, too late. We're doing it.
Did you immediately have to sign a longer lease?
Yeah, I pretty much said, yes, I'm going to do this with the landlord. We just did a new lease. Those guys were out. They lost their lease. They were helping them out. The people that owned that building were really super special people. I didn't even know what the Beltline was at the time.
Still wasn't. Well, was it there yet?
No,
it wasn't even there yet. Yeah,
it's only been there it's only been there now 6 years, really.
Yeah, so it wasn't even an idea yet.
I spent almost like 9 years down there before
the Beltline.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah. So okay, was the space built out, and then how big? How? So sure, $20,000 to get it locked up,
right?
But then to get it started is a lot. Is it? How expensive is that, man?
So the beauty of it is to take over a secondhand space in this business is probably the most the smartest thing you could do in any business. I mean, when you build a place, if you want to build a restaurant, you build it from the ground up, or you take over a space that's not
and then totally re-renovate. That's still $1 million, right, or more.
Easy, easy $1 million. The mechanical engineer, plumbing designs, everything you got to do, the hoods, the kitchen. There's so many things. Not one little thing; it's a million little things. So, not to mention the food. The service, the staff, 40 people on staff. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. This place already had some bones. I knew an architect that was a super good friend of mine that had built a lot of restaurants, or has built a lot of restaurants in Atlanta. Pretty much said, listen, you think you can help me out? And he did. So I pulled together the money that I thought it was going to take. I basically
what did it take? How much did it start? If you're not doing from scratch, and you say, well, we're going to use the space we have, we're going to obviously do some improvements, renovations. How much did it start to get going?
So I needed to do it for about $300,000, and I opened it up for $305,000. I got 2 investors. I sent out a business proposal to 100 people that I knew, that I thought might want to get involved, And I was going to give up shares and do this whole thing, and I was like, but I want to own the majority. So my business proposal was about me owning more than 51% of it, because I just wanted control of the whole thing. It was my destiny. It was meant to be me. So, that's kind of what happened. And I had 98 of them say, no thanks, appreciate it, but no thanks. I had 2 guys jump on. One was he was a Toyota dealer, and the other one was a lawyer. Both friends today, both great friends today. One of them's still in it. The other one, he gave me his shares after I gave him his money back.
Oh, no way. So how long did it take to pay back? So let's just say you guys all, you put in 100, they put in 100 each, 300, and that's all it took to get started.
Yeah. And then, then we had 400 to start.
Yeah.
All right. So, and both of them were silent partners. They were B members.
How long did it take for them to get their money back?
So I had told them that it was going to take about 4 years, 3 to 4 years. I thought I'd be able to pay him back. So 6 months in, I called the Toyota dealer, and he came and I said, let me take you to lunch. Came down to lunch. I gave him a check and his interest, and told him, okay, now that you're paid back, you're dropping 2 points, because that was in the contract. And he was like, you paying me back already?
Already? No. Yeah.
And I said, yeah. And he said, wow, that's fantastic. The following week, he called me, took me to lunch, and he said, man, you did really good. I don't really need the money. He said, I never thought I'd see it again, to be honest with you. But I like you. And I said, Mike, that's probably the nicest thing anybody ever did. And he passed me his contract back, and he said, you keep my shares.
No kidding. So he was a big chunk of an owner, and just said, look, you paid me back like that. Here you go.
That's it. Yeah.
No kidding. That's a story in business you never hear. I've never, ever heard of that in my entire life.
It was an amazing deal. He's a brilliant man. He knew what he had, and he honestly, I really do think that he didn't think he was ever going to see that money. I took him to the place, and he's like, where are we? And so it was great. It was, and then I took that back to the other one, and he's a lawyer, and he was like, Kevin, I love you, but I'm never going to do that.
Yeah,
go, that's fine. You don't have to do that. I still love you too. You still invested, and he's still invested today.
Still to this day.
Yeah.
So then when does it go? And then what made it hit so well? Well, first, I guess let's talk about food for a second. We got to talk about food here. I know this is a business show. We talk about money all the time. And the adventure of doing this is perfect for Money Adventure Social, which is every day with you now. And I want to ask you how you handle that. And then the health side, how do you deal with steaks and butter every day of your life?
Not very well.
What is it? How can you describe to me why what you do as a chef and an artist is just a little bit better than even the very best out there? What the hell are you doing?
Well, it's pretty simple. It's hospitality first. It's really about goodness and givingness and making people feel like they're in your own home. My mother did it for 50 years of her life. My father was a jazz musician. I was surrounded by parents and friends and people in the restaurant business since I was 14 years old that gave a shit, you know what I mean? That wanted to do the right thing for the customer. I've always been that way. I spend a lot of time in the dining room. I'm not a chef that hides behind the stove. I don't pack my tools up at night and leave. I spend time with the guests. I spend time with the clientele, spend time with the people that come to my restaurant, spend money with me. I make friends with them. I treat them on special occasions. That's how I do it. That's how it's got to be done. Otherwise, you're just another restaurant. You're just another,
Is it hard though? I mean, again, you're part of the community. Everybody knows you, but it's hard for you to know everybody.
Yeah.
How do you manage the social side of that? It's not like a party 24/7 for you because it's work.
Yeah.
What is that? How does you do the balance of the social piece of it?
Being married 29 years, my wife was in the restaurant business too. Actually, she was one of the executive secretaries for Commander's Palace. So that's where you guys met. Yeah, and she's a huge component of dotting I's and crossing T's when it comes to the financial aspect of it. So that's helped me, where I'm more the creative side, she's more the dollars and cents side. So she's been a huge influence in all of that. Making sure things are right, making sure things are done properly. But as far as just like the social aspect of it is it's difficult. We throw a party every night. Mm-hmm. We're always at a party. You know what I mean? Like, on Sundays, my wife's, I say, you want to go to dinner? She's like, hell no, I don't want to go to dinner. I want to spend time with you. And we're going to spend it at home, and we're going to cook dinner for ourselves, and we're going to be with each other on Sundays. She's had to endure a lot over the last 30 years, of me working 12, 14 hours a day, humping it in the restaurant business.
What is the schedule like, by the way? And maybe not today, but go back when you're in full force. What is your schedule like?
Full on. It's full on when you're doing it as a chef. You're spending 80 to 100 hours usually in the kitchen, or have something to do with the kitchen. Whether you're driving to the farmer's market, or planning menus, or prepping or cleaning or whatever it is, it's a 12 to 14 hour day for sure, and it's 6 days a week. And frankly, we're closed for lunch, so I never opened any of the restaurants for lunch, and we're closed on Sundays, which is kind of like hopefully staff retention. Most of them stay because it's a great schedule for most of them.
Oh, not having to work Sundays.
Not having to work Sundays and no lunches. So, they don't have to come in for those mediocre lunch shifts that a lot of people can't make money at because, nobody's drinking at lunch anymore. Those 2 martini lunches are kind of over.
What days were those? Were like that? Is that the 50s?
Yeah, I don't know, but let's go back.
That was the Don Draper days, man. Those sounded like great days. Yeah, at least they have a show about it.
Yeah. But it's hard, in the restaurant business. I mean, liquor is that's... there's more margin in liquor for sure.
Still, even in a place
beer,
like
wine, absolutely.
Still part of it.
Yeah.
So you've got the massive schedule. Now let's go from you. Well, I said, how do you make this work and be better than everybody? The first one is your hospitality, which is hard to. You can't just manufacture that. You got to have it deep down, like you have.
It's got to come from the heart.
And then the second part of it is, I would say that the food is different and it's at a special level. How did you get it there, and then how do you keep it there?
Yeah. Well, consistency is the key to anything. Houston's is a great example. Like, who do you know that doesn't like a Houston's restaurant, right?
Super efficient. It's same every location.
It's same in every location. We all aspire to be that good. I mean, their systems are so in place. That's the go-to, right? So the food is the food. It's always good. It's always great. It's a good square. You can bring your family there. You can go on a date night. You can do anything you want. But it's always, for the most part, there. And that's what we strive to. And consistency is the deal. So with that said, it's about hospitality managers that, I'm kind of the 51-49 rule, Wes, where I'll hire somebody 51% nice, 49% talent. I could teach you how to do the job, but I can't teach you how to be nice. So I'm a real nice guy when it comes to all of this restaurateur stuff, right? When you're playing restaurateur, it's about being nice, having humility, having integrity, having consistency, doing all of these things that really fill the void.
51-49 rule. Is that restaurant wide? Is that well known, or is that a Rathbunism?
That's kind of, well, I'd like to say it's a Rathbunism, but a guy by the name of Danny Meyer wrote a book about 10 years ago, I guess, and he said 51-49 rule. So they might say it's his idea, but that's kind of how we do it. That's how hiring and firing comes. That's how we hire people. That's how I've always hired people. It's about really the integrity that the people have.
Now, let's say you hit on something you create something that is just better. Let's say it's the way you guys do your butter and your truffle butter that you invent it, let's say, or you make it your own. Then it's your job then, if we spread this out to all these other locations.
Yeah.
Do the chefs that you hired, do they have to be in their own right the next Kevin Rathbun and be super, super talented? Or do they just have to be really good at their craft to be able to continue to keep the consistency? How does that work on such a bigger scale?
It's young people. I'm looking for talent, right? I'll teach talent, okay? I find somebody who has the excitement to do it. They might not know what I know after 43 years, but they're excited. They want to do it. It shows in the food, it shows in how they service the people, it shows in the staff commitment. All of this is super, super important when it comes to having good people. Longevity is key. If I can keep people 5, 6, 7 years, it's so much better than losing people every year. On that top level line, whether it's an executive chef or a sous chef or a pastry chef or a general manager or an AGM, these guys, you want to kind of keep them. You want to keep them happy, but you also want them to be happy, because if they're not happy, the fish stinks from the head, right? So, when the head goes bad, the whole body goes bad. Done. So, that's my job, is to keep people kind of motivated and the energy there, the pay scale high enough for them to where they're, just not going to get.
And are you able to pay a little bit above market? And have you been able to do that?
Yes. It's important that you do. Otherwise, they're just going to come and go like the time of day. And a little bit of that, when I say young, I don't go out and get a headhunter to find the best chef that can run a restaurant of mine, because I'm a chef. If I was just the front of the house guy, or if I was just the restaurateur that didn't know anything, and put me in, coach, I can do it. If I have to do it, I always say I'm only 2 or 3 removed from disaster. If they all left at one time, I'd be just screwed.
Right. But if one person left, you'd be back in the kitchen, no problem.
I'd get right back in there and do it all over again. And so, I don't have that. I don't have just an army of people, right? It's like, I have good people, good soldiers in place.
Few good people in every place.
And then, that all just travels down to goodness.
Ryan, our executive producer for Money Matters, who I've worked with for well over a decade now, was asking, or wanted me to ask you, if you were to redo this again today, just say you're starting from scratch, you're leaving Buckhead Life Group in 2019.
Sure.
What kind of restaurant would you open today? How much harder or easier would it be, know what you know now?
Well, I tell you what I would have done is probably bought all the property. Now, at this stage of the game, I want to buy property. I don't want to lease anymore. So,
if you would have known back then,
if I would have known
that it would have been so successful, you could have potentially bought it instead of leasing.
I could have potentially taken that risk and rolled the dice, But I didn't know. I was like, the first day we opened Rathbun's, it was like I cried. My wife was like, "Why are you crying?" I'm like, now I know exactly what to do. The day it opened, I've been doing it for 28 years. I didn't know a lot about leasing, architects, kitchen design, how all that stuff was done, but after you get it open, it's just an epiphany, it's an epiphany that you're there.
And you just felt like, this is what I was meant to do.
This is what I meant to do. And it just took off. We were, I don't know, I think we did 80 covers, which is 80 people for dinner the first night. That was a Thursday. And then I think we did it 82 on Friday. And then, it was Friday and Saturday. And then we were closed on Sunday. And then Monday we had like 6 people on the books, and I'm like,
oh boy.
Oh God, what have I done? But within 30 days, it was in the black, and we were doing 400 people on Saturday nights.
On a night, in a big night.
250 during the week, and 350 on Fridays.
Man, that's so cool.
It was amazing. It really was amazing. It performed the place at like 2.2 million. And it did like 4.3 the first year.
First year,
yeah. But it's an anomaly. Not everybody can do that. And the reason is
what is the highest grossing one now? What does
the steakhouse is the busiest one. Yeah,
that's still the busiest.
Yeah, the steakhouse is a very busy place because of what it is. The check average high, so when you're buying prime meat and big bottles of wine and martinis, it can get up there to $100 a person or so. So that's the one. And the beauty of it is I bought that building too. So
you did?
Yeah,
okay, so what year
there,
did you go? What year were you?
So that was in 06. That was in 06. Rathbun's was doing really well. Krog Bar had opened. It was doing really well. And I saw an opportunity down there on that end of it and knew that the Beltline would eventually be there in 7 to 8 years or 6 years.
And it still wasn't super hot yet, so you got to
It wasn't hot at all. It was still a war zone. I mean, it was a war zone down there, really.
It's a big building, too.
Yeah. I don't own the whole thing. It's more condoed, so I own
your
like
end of it,
10,000 square feet, and I own, the grass.
If I'm, here, let's switch to I don't know if it matters whether you have a bunch of money or not. Let's say you're not a billionaire and you're listening. And you can't do this as a hobby. This is not a toy, but you're somebody that has at least a little bit of momentum, a little bit of, or you could even go get some capital like you did.
Yeah.
And you're a chef somewhere, or let's say you're not a chef, but you're one of these. You've looked at restaurants all of your life and said, I want to have my own restaurant. And I love food, and maybe I love cooking myself, and I love the hospitality end of it, and I want to be like Al Pacino in the best Italian restaurant in the world. And name your cuisine, doesn't matter. How difficult is that today to restart in a city like Atlanta? And what would you tell somebody that was hey, I'm going to do this, Kevin. Yeah. I have 3 minutes with Kevin Rathbun. How can I be successful to do that? Or would you say, listen, man, it's like it's a 1 in 100 that it'll even work?
Yeah, it's kind of a careful what you wish for scenario. It's the only thing I know how to do, Wes. So I truly believe, the 10,000 hour rule, right? Like if you're one of those people who just have dug in to something you've been doing since you were a child and you still love it, go open as many restaurants as you want to. If you find the admiration in it because you just love to drink and eat good food and hang out with people and, kind of show off a kind of sexy little spot, be very careful what you wish for. You have to have the right people running it. You have to have the right integrity running it. There's so many, like I said, it's not one thing, it's a million little things. It's not like making a bolt. It's like I have 6 restaurants and every menu's different. So it's like thousands of bolts that have to be made, and they're all different. They're all just a little bit different, a hair off, and that's the hard part of it.
So when you say whatever you wish for, it could be fun and glamorous, but that end of it is what could sink it quickly. Hey, you're having too much fun, and it's great for a little while, but you're losing money and you're out. Yeah. And that's the problem with why so many of these things fail.
It's a labor of love for sure. It's a lot of businesses. They don't have to take it home at night. The restaurant business, you take it home at night.
Why do you take it home at night? Just because you could always be reviewed online, or you're always thinking what
somebody could talk about you on Yelp, or customers aren't satisfied. You lost a chef. Your general manager's unhappy. You lost 2 servers. You can't find anybody in the help pool. I mean, it's there's people that have businesses that they do during the day. They do it Monday through Friday. They have companies that make one item and they make it super, super well. It's consistent, and it's they know exactly what they're doing. Yeah. This is every day is a restart. Every day is a redo. The restaurant business is not for everybody. And if you haven't done it and you're enamored by it, and then you somehow do it, I guarantee within about a year you're going to go, why the hell did I do that? Because
and you just don't have a choice because it's in you. You have to. This is what you have to do.
It's the only thing I know how to do. That's why I'm coming to you, Wes, so you can tell me what to do with the money now.
That's going to be next. That's coming next. Now, what if you were to look at the last 10 you've seen friends, colleagues in the industry that have not worked out, what makes them fail? Is there 1 or 2 main things that you see where it just goes wrong?
Yeah, it's, like I say, I think the fish stinks from the head. I think that whole top line piece, if you don't have the right people in place, the right ownership, the funding behind you, if restaurateurs, you could go build a $6 million restaurant. There's a bunch of them in town, $6, $7, $8 million. How do you pay that back? You got to look at occupancy rates. You got to figure that, if you go into an A, a destination A,
sure,
it's going to be, $40, $50, $70, $100 a square foot. When I opened up Rathbun's, it was like 16. Right, it was $16 a square foot. Yeah, such a big difference. So
you pick prime real estate in the heart of Buckhead. You could be paying just absolute super high. You're margined. You've got everything has to go right. It's got to be full for it to work.
Yeah, that's right. And in the restaurant business, 10% occupancy rate. That's high. I don't want to pay that. I want to pay 2. Rathbun's ran a 2, 1.5, 1.5, 2, 2.5 for 10 years. Before we started, and that's another 8% to the bottom line, which is huge dollars in the restaurant business. Great restaurants make 20% maybe. So, you talk about businesses, right? You talk about most people make 50% in their businesses.
Well, let's say a third is great. A third, if your margins are 30%, you're just running amazingly well. Yeah. So where do you guys want to be?
Well, listen, I'm happy at 20. I'm super happy at 20. Anything under that, I'm striving to be better. Either that or, it's customer based, right? You don't know how many people are coming in. There's restaurants on every corner now. 15 years ago, Inman Park, there was 3 of us: Soto, me, and Wisteria.
Yeah.
And the patio, which is now something else.
That's been a lot of things.
But within a year and a half, within a mile and a half, it's a 75 restaurant radius now from what was 4.
4 to 75, but you guys are still you're still full.
Still doing it. There's more people. Atlanta's growing leaps and bounds. That area has completely changed. Back, it was a war zone back in.
Kevin, you got a whole new audience for Money Matters today. You're going to have an influx of Money Matters listeners coming to Rathbun's.
That's why I'm trying not to say the wrong thing.
Yeah. They're coming to your restaurant. Well, okay. So you've been successful with this. I guess
I've been blessed for sure.
You've been blessed.
Yes.
You really have. What do you do we'll talk about money for a second. How has it impacted, I read a lot. I did a big research study on money and happiness and wrote a whole book about money and happiness. It's called You Can Retire Sooner Than You Think, 5 Money Secrets of the Happiest Retirees. It was really a study about how different levels of money impacts your happiness, but you could insert a lot of words there. It's not necessarily happiness. It's call it comfort, peace of mind. Sure. I'm not worried about my next roof overhead, food. At what point did you start to feel comfortable, or because you're in a relatively risky business and you're always hands-on, are you always thinking about it?
Always thinking about it. I think even as a great entrepreneur in anything, you really have to pay attention to it. Again, the fish stinks from the head. If you're not paying attention to your businesses, something's inevitably going to go wrong. That's where I'm at. I'm constantly putting out fires, trying to do this, whether it's a health benefit, whether it's a tax benefit, whether it's
trying to make it better,
whether it's the employees that we're trying to upgrade, that just maybe, they're kind of stifled and maybe they just need to go on somewhere, finding the right time to get the right people in there and keeping them there. So
let's say somebody came in and bought the restaurant group, not to say that's for sale, but for let's choose a giant number. Let's just say $100 million. Yeah. So Kevin Rathbun no longer has to work, which would be a sad day if I couldn't go to a Rathbun establishment. But let's say you take off a month or 6 months. Yeah. What do you do after that when you really truly don't have to worry about money anymore?
I don't think it's ever going to happen. I think retirement is not in a restaurateur's mind, really. I think if I'm rolling around there 10 years from now in a wheelchair,
you're going to keep doing it.
I'm going to have a drink. I'm going to have a bourbon with my regulars. I might buy them an appetizer. I'm going to make sure the chef's doing his right thing, and I'm going to taste the food. And I'm in the house of I'm not in the house of pain. I'm in a house of pleasure, and that's what the restaurant business is, especially if it's running on all cylinders. It's a fun atmosphere. It's a
what
great
is the best?
atmosphere.
So that's a great way to think about it. Is that first? So we call these core pursuits. So happy retirees have core pursuits. In some cases, their core pursuit is they love their work, and you happen to have one of those businesses that is actually an art and it's a science and it's a business and it's social. So you kind of got, if you're getting it, if the restaurant business goes well, it has all the things that you kind of want, but it takes this massive journey to get there, and you're there.
Yeah.
And so you love it.
Those core pursuits are all true. I mean, that's the truism of what I do. I mean, I love the social aspect of it. I love meeting new people all the time. I love to travel. I love to eat at the best restaurants in the world. I was just in San Sebastian, Spain last year, and I don't know, I ate probably 10 like 2 or 3 star Michelin restaurants, and just had some of the best food and drink some of the best wines, and I mean, that's what I love to do. That's a core pursuit. I mean, I like golf, but I'm never going to be a good golfer, right? I'd like to do some art. I'd really like, as far as
I like the Penley of you.
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
I'd like to take some lessons and paint something. I mean, I feel like I have that creativity in me.
So you do some others. So you're a golfer a little bit at least.
Yeah, I like to golf. I love to travel. Traveling's my thing. If I can go.
Can you get away what's the most you can get away before you're like itch back to, I gotta get home?
I could get away for 10 to 12 days, maybe 2 weeks, Yeah. I've never had more than 2 weeks off in my entire life. Yeah. I mean, I've, and it's, I could probably do it. My wife and I are getting ready to celebrate a big milestone.
30 years?
29 years.
29 years.
She's getting ready to celebrate her 30th birthday. And it's, it's like, that's a big milestone.
That's awesome.
I think we're gonna do something big. And I want to do a month, but she can't do it because she's like, I could probably get away from the kitchen because I have chefs in place and this in place and, managers in place. But she's she's talking to the accountant every day.
So she's in the business. So she's a big part of the business.
Oh, big part. So for her to get away, it's like a lot of ajna, you know what I mean? Because there's so many things that could, that could come off the rails, right?
What is so you've done a bunch of travel and you went to Spain, you're talking about San Sebastian. What's the best place in America that you would go to? What's your favorite restaurant in America beyond yours? And then if we had to go to Europe to go find a place, where would you go? What are your top 1 or 2?
Well, I mean, I love New York as a whole. I don't really pigeonhole myself. I'm not one of those guys that goes back and back and back. I'm always looking for a new identity somewhere of a restaurant. So, I mean, there's great restaurants all over the world. There's great restaurants in America. Some of the people that I know that I met along the way, I want to go see them. I want to feel that hospitality from them. I just don't want to be one of, the cattle call that goes into a restaurant, enjoys the meal, understands it. But, if I had met a chef along the way, whether it was Jeremiah Tyra back in the day, I went to Stars when it was like after I'd met him at a couple of events, right? I mean, it's not there anymore, but what a special human being. And, just get to know him. He comes out to the table, that experience is
That's
the experience.
Awesome then for you.
Yeah, that's the experience for me. Because restaurants are, they're everywhere.
Yeah, and it's not like you compete with each other because there's so many. There's not a zero-sum game at all. Yeah. So everybody, it's a very friendly environment. It's not like one chef is, looking at another chef. If they go there, they're not going to come here. That's not the case in restaurants.
Yeah. And then, the other thing, Wes, is that, after almost 30 years of marriage, my wife was like at 15 years, I used to take her to some of the best 5-star, 4-star, 3-star Michelin, because I was always into seeing new stuff and learning and seeing and how could I be better. And she'd push her food around a little bit, the foie gras, the caviar, the stuff, like, you don't want that? No, I'm not really hungry tonight. And then after 15 years of marriage, she was like, that's it. I got to tell you the truth. I hate that shit. So now it's like.
Fancy, yeah.
Yeah, that fancy stuff, So, i.e., now fast forward to my restaurants, and they're not the most cutting edge restaurants. I got a steakhouse. I'm from Kansas City, Missouri. I'm not meeting the 10% of the people. I'm meeting 100%. I got seafood. I got baked potatoes. I got, French fries. I got great meat. It's for everybody. So, and to be able to buy that piece of property back then, 12, 13 years ago, take that roll of a dice and build it out. It was a substantial chunk of money. And, no idea if it was going to work or not,
and it did.
So far, so good. It's been fantastic.
Man, that is so much fun. All right, so if we go into let's say we had an overtime. Anything else I have not asked Kevin that we need to talk about here? I talked about schedule.
Yes, we have not gotten to Iron Chef yet.
Oh, it's right. We didn't get to Iron Chef. Okay. Adventure. We talked a lot of hobbies. You do a lot of stuff. You're going to start painting. Your favorite trips, your restaurant. I like the story about your wife and her. How old are you, by the way?
56.
Okay. I thought you were 43. You said 43 years.
I've been in the restaurant business
43 years. Yeah. All right. I figured you're our age.
Yeah.
Our 30s, 40s, 50s.
Yeah.
That's how it works here. 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s.
Right.
All right.
We could talk
to me about Iron Chef.
Yeah.
I want to know, first of all, how do you describe to your audience who hasn't seen the show how that really works, and then how do you win as a chef? Who's the judge, and how does that work?
So Iron Chef, of course, was started in Japan, and it was iconic there.
TV show. It was a TV show.
It was a TV show. There were 3 chefs. 3 Iron Chefs in Japan. There was a. How they started, I don't know. They were smoking something, I don't know what they were doing, but, it ended up coming to America. And then, now you have some of the top chefs in America at the time start Iron Chef. Mario Batali, Bobby Flay, Morimoto. Those were the top.
Those are the three.
The main.
And Iron Chef just means literally like the pinnacle of being a chef.
And then I guess the nephew of the chairman in Japan came over to America. He's an actor. He was an actor in America and in Japan. They came up with hey, let's bring this piece over to America, and that's kind of how it all got started. What it is it's a competition show against an Iron Chef and another chef from wherever they get them from. And then each of those chefs
was this a season or one episode?
It was just one episode. Yeah, It was filmed in, it took us all day. It was probably a 12-hour deal at the end of the day. It was just one episode, which is great.
And how did it flush out? So how did you compete? What were the dishes? And then it was you and your brother.
So it was my brother and I. I still remember.
How's your brother as a chef?
He's great. He's a great chef. Really, really talented. Super talented. Super motivated.
Does he have a restaurant?
Yeah, he's got restaurants in Dallas, Texas. He's got like 3 restaurants there.
We know where we're going on our next Dallas trip.
Absolutely. He's into a lot of Pacific Rim, sushi style places, which are super, super, everybody wants it now. So he's doing great. He was just here for the Masters. He did 1018 Club down at the Masters for the week.
Oh,
he's been doing that for 4 or 5 years. So that's a hospitality house outside the grounds.
Nice.
Great chef though, really good. I mean, we both started at 14. We've been doing it all our lives, and
so you're here against Flay and
yep. So it's my brother
Batali?
and I. Yeah, just Flay and his 2 sous chefs, my brother and I, and one of our sous chefs. And how that happened was I was at the Miami Wine and Food Festival, and I'm serving 1,000 people one item, and this guy comes up and he says, "Hey, you think you'd ever want to be on Iron Chef?" I said, "Yeah, hell yeah, I want to be on Iron Chef. Why not? Why wouldn't you?" And he said, "Well, here's my card, and I'll call you." And as he's walking away, I said, "Hey, by the way, I got a brother that's a chef in restaurants as well, in high-end stuff, and maybe you could do a brotherly thing." And when he turned around, that bell went off. You could just tell, like the balloon said, "Oh, hell yeah." And it was like 3 days he gave me a call. So, and then we were on Iron Chef. And I've known Bobby for a long time, too.
Where did you know him from?
So when I was doing Southwestern Food, which is kind of that's his mainstay.
That's his main thing.
He's probably, I don't know how many years younger, maybe 3 or 4 years younger than I am. When I was at Baby Ruth in Dallas, Texas, my chef, the chef that owned the restaurant, Stephen Piles, who was kind of one of the 4 front runners of Southwestern Food, said, "Hey, we're going to New York this week to do Meals on Wheels, a charity event, but we want to eat at this kid's place." They just got written up in the New York Times, and it was called Mesa. No, it wasn't Mesa Grill. It was Miracle Grill at the time. So I said, yeah. So I read up on it. We went there, and Bobby was 18 or 19, I think. He was a young guy.
Oh, so you guys are a similar age then?
Yeah, and this was years ago, right? So he came out after the meal. He's enthralled with my boss, and he's like, because he kind of adapted a lot of his stuff from him. And, the next thing you know is he says, I'm working on this project. It's called Mesa Grill. And, can I come down and spend some time in your restaurants? So Bobby Flay comes to, Dallas, Texas, and he spends about a week in my kitchen, and he spends about a week in Steven's kitchen.
Wow.
So,
you get to know him. Yeah.
Yeah, I got to know him super, super well. He's a friend of mine today. And, he gives me credit in his first book, the first book he ever wrote. There's some recipes in by Kevin Rathbun.
That's cool.
So just so when I saw him in Iron Chef and they mentioned my name to him, he's like,
let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah. So
and then how did you
like old home week?
So how does it work? I mean, I thought they didn't let the contestants beat the Iron Chef, or do they once in a while you win?
Every now and then you get beat. Yeah, I mean,
how'd you beat him? What were you making?
It wouldn't be fun if they didn't get beat.
Yeah, it's true. But what were you making?
So we had it was battle elk. So, when they lifted the hood off of that thing, it was like elk parts, elk rack, elk this, elk that. They had like short loins, that are, like 80, 90 pounds, My brother picks up a hole when he throws it over his shoulder. He runs over, he breaks it down. Bobby dropped his on the floor. It was like made for TV.
Oh, it's great. Yeah. It slipped out of his shoulder.
They took that off the first one, but then when they did the top 10 best episodes, when he dropped the elk, so that we were on that one too. It was good.
And you made elk.
And we made elk.
And you made better elk than
5 dishes. You have to do 5 dishes, and you have to do 5 plates of each. 3 for judges. Or no, 4 plates of each. 5 for the judges, and the chairman eats, and then 1 gets whisked off to the for photography.
So that was just great exposure. You didn't necessarily win any money.
Nah, you don't.
But you have this great exposure.
We win asses in chairs for that, Wes.
Yeah, man, that's a good prize.
Yeah, it's a good prize. It's a good prize. Yeah, people ask me that all the time. What'd you get for that? I go,
you're here.
Butts in seats. Yeah.
You're here.
That's it. Yeah. And I told that, I said a story earlier about some Russians coming into my place.
Where'd the Russians come from?
One day, I don't know, we had a private party for like 30 people, and they're drinking. I'm like, what are they drinking back? I mean, like 5 or 6 bottles of vodka in the first half hour. I'm like, all right. So I go out, 2 of them are smoking, and one of them goes, are you the chef who beat Bobby Flay? And he goes, I said, yes, I am. And he said, you are a legend in our country.
You're a legend, right? In our country.
Too funny. In Russia, right? Yeah. So
a legend. Yeah. Listen, man, you're a legend in America. You're a living legend in America and in Russia, and food knows no boundaries.
It was too funny, though, that night awesome. In particular.
Well, all right, you're gonna have more Money Matters listeners, because you've never been on the show before. I know you've done some stuff with Melinda, but now you've done you're here with the Money Matters audience, sure, so I think that should hopefully win some more butts in seats.
Great.
They won't be disappointed. I vouch for it. Fantastic. I mean, I can listen. If there's anything I can fully vouch for, it's hard to know when you can fully vouch for something 100% and have zero worries. This is one of those things. I mean, any one of the restaurants you can go to of Rathbun's, and it's going to be arguably the best meal of your life, and to your point, kind of the best hospitality.
We do it well. I mean, we try to do it well. We trip just like anybody else, but we're also in the fix-it business, Wes. So when we do trip, hopefully with that nicety and that humbleness and from the heart, it's coming out. We can fix it too.
Well, it comes through the restaurants. It comes through here on the air, for goodness sake. Right. So thanks for being with us, man. This is a real pleasure. Thank you for being with us. Thank you,
Wes. Thanks for having me.
If you want to find Kevin Rathbun and his restaurant group, you can visit rathbunsteak.com?
Yeah, just go to kevinrathbun.com.
Yeah, and I'll do that in post.
And that'll lead you to all the web.
kevinrathbun.com. And you guys still do people call, or you do it online now? Or all above?
Both, all the above. But okay. You can go to Resi. You can do the ResiApp.com. It's like an open table piece, and you can get you can go through a portal there that'll get you a reservation as well.